Walt Disney is regarded as the pioneer of the American animation industry. He is the creator of immortal characters like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. He also planned and built an all-inclusive amusement park, Disneyland, near Los Angeles, California. He built an empire which is currently worth more than $200 billion. He currently holds the record for the most number of Academy Awards to his name. But all these greatness came from humble beginnings. Walter Elias Disney was born on December 5th, 1901 in Chicago, Illinois. He was the fourth son of Elias Disney and Flora Hall. Elias was a carpenter, farmer, and a building contractor. Flora worked as a public school teacher. In 1906, when Walt Disney was 4 years old, his family moved to a farm near a small Midwestern town in Missouri. This farm is said to have later inspired the model of Main Street, USA in Disneyland. It is right here he developed his interests towards drawing when he was asked to draw the neighbor's horse. He was even paid for it. Disney soon began drawing by copying the pictures from various magazines. He also started working with watercolors and crayons. Meanwhile, things were not going as expected in farming for his father. So Elias abandoned all his efforts in farming and moved his family to Kansas City in 1911 in efforts of starting a new business in the newspaper industry. Disney attended the Benton Grammar School where he met fellow student Walter Pfeiffer, who came from a family of theater fans and introduced Disney to the world of vaudeville and motion pictures.
With footsteps lagging,
But you remember we were always bragging.
I said when I get bigger, no more school for me.
But now that we're
Before long, Disney was spending more time in his friend's house than at his home. Disney and his brother Roy woke up at 4:30 every morning to help his father's business by delivering before and after school hours. The schedule was exhausting, and Disney often received poor grades after falling asleep in classes. In spite of all that, he continued delivering papers for more than 6 years. Walt Disney later said that many of his habits and compulsions of his adult life stemmed from the disciplines and discomforts of helping his father with a paper route. Meanwhile, he also attended Saturday courses at the Kansas City Art Institute and also took correspondence course in cartooning. In mid-1918, during World War I, he attempted to join the United States Army to fight the Germans, but was rejected as he was too young. He was still persistent to join with efforts to provide his help and support. After researching a bit, he came across a possibility in the Red Cross, which accepted people older than 17 years of age. He was just 16 during that time, but he thought it would be easier to fake as a 17-year-old guy and forged his date of birth on his birth certificate. He joined the Red Cross as an ambulance driver and was shipped to France. Even there he showed his passion towards cartoons by drawing cartoons on the sides of ambulances for decorations. Some of those works were even published in the army newspaper named Stars and Stripes. He returned to Kansas City in the year 1919, where he worked as an apprentice artist at a commercial art studio where he met a fellow artist, Iwerks. In 1920, just a few months after joining the studio, both him and his friend Iwerks were laid off. Unsure of what to do next, they both decided to try their luck in starting their own studio business. They named it Iwerks Disney Commercial Artists. Luck was going against them. The first venture did not last long, and they had to shut it down as the business failed to attract many customers. They both agreed to leave to earn money at the Kansas City Film Ad Company. The company produced commercials using the cutout animation technique.
I used sort of little puppet things. We didn't draw them like we do today. I used to make little cutout things, and joints were pinned, and we'd put them under the camera, and we'd maneuver them and make.
Disney quickly became fascinated in animation. He didn't settle just doing the work that was assigned. With some assistance, he managed to borrow a book on animation and a camera, and began experimenting his curiosity at home. He soon realized that Cel Animation was more promising than the traditional cutout method. He tried to persuade the owner of the studio to use Cel Animation, but the owner was not convinced. Failing to convince the owner, he opened a new business with a co-worker, Fred Harmon. Their main client was the local Newman Theatre, and the short cartoons they produced were sold as Newman's Laugh-O-Grams. The popularity of Laugh-O-Grams grew, and it led to the establishment of Laugh-O-Gram Studio in May 1921. He hired more animators, including Fred Harmon's brother Rudolph and Iwerks. But fate came into play again. All the cartoons that were produced in the studio were not enough to keep the company running. Disney tried his last shot with producing Alice's Wonderland based on the adventure Alice in Wonderland. This combined live action with animation, and it was a 12.5-minute one-reel film. Though this film was completed successfully, it was already too late to save the studio and it went into bankruptcy in 1923. Having failed twice in a short span, Disney was devastated. He decided to move into Hollywood in July 1923. He was 21 years old at this time. Disney tried selling Alice's Wonderland to many distributors, but every single one of them turned him down. At the same time, a New York distributor named Margaret J. Winkler was looking for a new series of cartoons, as she was on the verge of losing rights to Over the Inkwell and Felix the Cat cartoon series. Disney met Margaret, and in October they signed a contract for 6 Alice comedies with an option for 2 further series of 6 episodes each. Celebrating this new fortune, Disney and his brother Roy formed the Disney Brothers Studio, which later became the Walt Disney Company. In July 1924, Disney managed to hire his long-term friend Iwerks and persuaded him to relocate to Hollywood from Kansas, where Iwerks was at that time. By 1926, Margaret's role in the distribution of Alice series had been handed over to her husband, Charles Mintz, who was also a film producer. The series ran till July 1927, when Charles Mintz requested new material to distribute through Universal Pictures. Disney and Iwerks began working on their new creation, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, a character which Disney wanted to be peppy, alert, saucy, and venturesome, keeping him also neat and trim. Everything seemed to be going fine for Disney until another fate struck him. Charles Mintz was spending unusual hours with their staff in Disney's studios. Even when Disney came to know about it, he didn't think of it as an issue. Following the success of Oswald series, Disney planned to negotiate with Charles for an increase in the fee for producing Oswald series. But to Disney's surprise, Charles wanted to lower the payment. Disney was left puzzled. It was only then he came to know the real reasons for Charles' long hours at his studio. Charles threatened to start his own studio and persuade most of the staff members in the studio to work directly for him if he didn't accept the contract. To add to all that, Disney also found that Universal Pictures owned the intellectual property rights to Oswald. Disney finally refused to accept the reductions in fee and ultimately lost all his staff members, and only Iwerks chose to remain with him. As Disney and Iwerks lost the rights to Oswald, they are now forced to create a new character from scratch. Learning from previous animations and other works, they both knew from the beginning that they wanted a character that was very simple so that it was easier to animate. They worked on a character that was said to be inspired by a pet mouse that Disney had adopted while working in his Laugh-O-Gram studio. Disney's original choice of name was Mortimer Mouse, but it was later renamed to be Mickey Mouse. Disney wasn't involved in much of the animation process, but provided Mickey's voice until 1947. In the words of one Disney employee, Iwerks designed Mickey's physical appearance, but Walt gave him his soul. Mickey Mouse first appeared in May 1928. After a couple of sound tests, Disney used synchronized sound on the third shot for the Steamboat Willie, which is the first produced sound cartoon. Over the course of 5 years, Disney had produced a few more cartoons and they gained large popularities. By the year 1934, Disney had become dissatisfied with producing stereotypic cartoons. He wanted more and believed that a feature-length cartoon would be more profitable. The studio began the 4-year production of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs based on the fairy tale. As soon as the news leaked out about the project, many in the film industry criticized and predicted it would lead to bankruptcy. Many even nicknamed it Disney's folly. After many controversies, Snow White finally premiered in December 1937 to high praise from critics and audiences and turned out to be one of the most successful motion picture of 1938, and by the end of May 1939 its total gross surpassed $6.5 million. This made it the most successful sound film made to that date. Adjusting inflation, it is around $130 million in today's value. The years following the success of Snow White were called the Golden Age of Animation by the Walt Disney Family Museum. After Snow White, the studio began producing Pinocchio and Fantasia in 1938. Both were released in 1940 and neither of them performed well at the box office. This was partly due to the fact that it was during the start of the World War II. The studio made a huge loss on both pictures and was deeply in debt by the end of February 1941. In response to the financial crisis, Disney and his brother Roy started the company's first public stock offering and implemented heavy salary cuts. This led to various strikes, hatred among staff members. As a result of this, various animators and staff members left the studio and all these interrupted the studio's next production, Dumbo. After World War II, in the early 1950s, Disney produced Cinderella. This was the studio's first animated feature film in 8 years. It costed around $2 million to produce and earned nearly $8 million in its first year. This was very well received and was very popular with critics and theater audiences. Disney continued to produce full-length animated features including Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan. For several years, Disney had been considering building a theme park. He took his daughters to Griffith Park in Los Angeles and was not impressed by the appearance and the ambience of the park. He visited Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen, Denmark, and was heavily influenced by the cleanliness and the layout of the park, and immediately decided that he should build one like this where family, kids and everyone seemed happier. After countless discussions with investors, Disney found a perfect location in Anaheim, Los Angeles. The construction work for the amusement park began in the mid-1954 and Disneyland opened in July 1955 to the public. The opening ceremony was broadcasted on American Broadcasting Company, which reached 70 million viewers. The park was designed as a series of themed lands linked by the central Main Street, USA, a replica of the Main Street in his hometown of Marceline. An editorial in the New York Times considered that Disney had tastefully combined some of the pleasant things of yesterday with fantasy and dreams of tomorrow. Although there were early minor problems with the park, it was an instant success, and after a month's operation, Disneyland was receiving over 20,000 visitors a day, and by the end of its first year, it attracted 3.6 million guests. About a decade later, Disney went on to announce his plans to develop another theme park to be called Disneyworld. This is the present Walt Disney World. In early November 1966, he was diagnosed with lung cancer and was treated with cobalt therapy. Disney had been a heavy smoker since World War I, and he did not use cigarettes with filters and had smoked a pipe as a young man. On November 30, he again felt unwell and was taken by ambulance from his home to St. Joseph Hospital, where, on December 15, 1966, he was pronounced dead. He died of circulatory collapse caused by lung cancer. His remains were cremated 2 days later at the Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. Disney received around 59 nominations, including 22 awards. Both are records in the Academy of Awards. In 1960, Disney was inducted to the Hollywood Walk of Fame with 2 stars, one for motion pictures and the other for his television work. His iconic Mickey Mouse was given his own star for motion pictures in 1978. The empire that he has created is currently valued over $200 billion. There have been many controversies and criticisms on his lifestyles, attitude, work cultures, but in the end, he remains as an American icon and a central figure in the history of animation. There is no denying his path-breaking accomplishments. The life of Disney has been portrayed numerous times in movies, biographies, documentaries, and television series.